Welcome to Dub Zone. We are stoked to have you with us. Football galore this weekend, including 3 games in the Dub today and a whole heap to break down after round 2 of the Liberty A-League. I'm Neve Owens. It's brilliant to have your company. This is what is coming up on Dub Zone tonight. We're going to start in Brisbane, where Brisbane are absolutely roaring. Back-to-back wins, this time over champion Sydney FC. We'll rate their title chances and we'll look at what next for the Sky Blues. We're going to have a look at Melbourne City as well. They are flying. We'll relive their victory over Canberra United and a first win in 14 years for the Mariners. Do we have another Western United first season success story on our hands? I absolutely hope so, if we're going to see celebrations like that right throughout the season. A heap to talk about after round 2 of the Liberty A-League. And I'm here once again alongside A-League's commentator, Teo Palazzeri. Hello, Teo.
Great to see you again, Neve.
Good to see you. And you too, Teresa Polias. Hello.
Good to see you both.
Lovely to have your company. We're going to start with what caught your eye this weekend, Teo, because I feel like with Isuzu Ute A-League action back, Liberty A-League action back and a few big announcements, there's a heap to talk about.
Well, let's combine them all because Unite Round is coming in January. And this is exciting because unlike, say, Gather Round in the AFL or Magic Round in the NRL, this is the men's and the women's competition coming together in Sydney for one massive weekend. Leichhardt Oval is going to host consecutive doubleheaders in the Liberty A-League, but we're also going to see those women's matches integrated into the men's program as well. It's very exciting. It's really united the football community and it's received a heap of positive feedback when it was announced during the week.
I love this, T. You see Caxton Street absolutely going off during Magic Round and you hear from the players themselves how much they buzz over all being in the same place over the one weekend to experience that live. This time, from a football perspective, for the first time in Australian sport, we have both the men's and women's competitions doing the same thing.
Yeah, it's amazing to see football leading the way in that regard, with the men's and women's crossing over and supporting each other. And I think as a player it would be an incredible experience, and it's just a great celebration of the game.
I mean, as the concept develops, you talk about the incredible experience. Do you think we could actually end up with like an Olympic Village style setup where all the players congregate on one common area?
Do we think that's a safe option? I mean, there's some stories out of Olympic villages in the past. T, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, might steer clear of that, but given past events. But no.
Heaps to look forward to, for sure, even this weekend where, you know, that was spread out across the city. So that's Unite Round coming up. A lot to celebrate from a Brisbane perspective to start the season as well, Teo. 2 wins from 2 outings, and this time it was against the defending champs. It is a long time since Aurora have started the season with back-to-back victories.
You have to go back to the 2015-16 season to find the last time Raw started with consecutive wins against anyone, never mind 2 teams that were in the top 4. I took one word out of this performance, though, Teresa, and that was resolute. Chelsea Blissett scores the match-winning goal. It's a very well-taken goal, but that's only one of 2 shots on target for the entire game for the Brisbane Roar, which to me says this was a story about how well they defended in the game.
Absolutely, Teo, and 1 goal is all they needed, really, and you used the best word there. I had desire, they were physical as well. I think they were more physical than Sydney were. That goal from Blissett was fantastic, and they were able to use their desire to hold that game out. What a great start for them.
Blissett's one of those new faces that's come in from Melbourne City. They lost, Jamila Rankin, Jessie Rashart retired, Cassia Lind left. They brought in Tegan Thompson back to the club from the NPL in Queensland and Leah Scarpelli, the American defender. But I am all about the Genaissance. Jenna McCormick, we've seen her in the Matildas. She didn't have the greatest season at Adelaide last campaign. I don't think I'm overstepping the mark to say that. She has had 2 blinders. And I think it's that defensive combination with Holly McQueen and Leah Scarpelli. They are starting to show signs of a team that can definitely make the finals. I guess my question is, have they shown us enough in 2 weeks to join the legitimate title contenders?
Look, first of all, fantastic recruitment in the off-season for Brisbane, and McCormick's been exceptional defensively. She even scored last week. So, look, I think it's too early to call them genuine title contenders, but they're certainly in my top 6 for sure.
What about the return of Tamika Yallop? You talk about signings. This is a big one for Brisbane Roar. She played the first half, T, and you can see in some of those runs the way she's able to hold up the ball. She was looking for players to come through to feed. Didn't always have them there, but this is a quality footballer back in our league.
Yeah, look, it gives me memories of trying to mark Tamika Yallop in the old days, but the quality's absolutely there. And as the season goes on and Yallop gets more minutes and gets to know her team, she'll be so invaluable to the squad.
Particularly linking midfield and attack, though. This was the second lowest XG to win a game since the start of last year, and that belongs to Brisbane as well. So Gareth McPherson knows how to shut the gate at one end, and that's a brilliant way to start the season. But Yallop's going to be integral to them scoring a lot more goals.
Yeah, absolutely, and she is a goal scorer, and if they can even just get that one goal and then hold out, well, that's all they need.
I love that you've managed to wallop T with some XG in the very first game of the round.
Killing me, Tayo.
Stay with us, T. Stay with us. Don't leave
I'm good.
What
Breathe.
about Sydney FC? We talked last week about the loss of Nat Tobin. We didn't know how serious the injury was then. Unfortunately, it is an ACL. She's out for the season, which is terrible news for her herself and for her team. She's such a leader within this side, T. Defensively, so resolute as well. What do they do here? Do they need to splash some cash to replace her?
Yeah, it's horrible for the league itself, losing a player like Nat Tobin, and I do think that the team is still coming to terms with losing Nat, their leader. Look, I do think Ante needs to dip into the market here. However long that may take, we don't know. It's hard to recruit players at this point, foreign players, so perhaps he'll do a reshuffle and look locally at the moment, but then there's injury and niggling concerns there. Look, Sydney didn't look at their best. They looked a little ruffled in that game, and I do think I think they didn't bring that physicality that Brisbane had.
That applies to their attack as well. Trapped offside 5 times, 6 shots on target for the game, but none of them of high quality. And perhaps with Fiona Wirtz suffering a side strain, bowling too many overs in the nets, clearly. But with her out, they had to shuffle the pack again. Princess Abini is now the captain in the absence of Nat Tobin, but was subbed off during the game. And perhaps the moment that sums it up for you, T, is this right here. Charlotte McLean ended up being one of their main avenues to goal, just bombing from distance as the game went on.
Yeah, that probably epitomises their mentality at the moment. I do think they created a bit, but they were more so half chances. And normally in a game, you see a few clear-cut chances from Sydney. But look, it is early. I know it's an international break. They're actually going away, so then that complicates things even further. But look, Ante won't be panicking. He's good at remaining calm, and that gets into the squad as well. So I don't think there's cause for panic here for Sydney.
They don't play again in the Liberty A-League, at least until November 12, so a little bit of time to reshuffle that defensive line and decide what they do next. A-League's All Access is back for another season. Tayo, I know you loved this last year. Let's dip in to the first A-League's All Access episode because it had a Liberty A-League's focus, and Lydia Williams, who's back in the Liberty A-League this season, talked about the impact that the Women's World Cup is going to have.
I have a very important negotiation, CBA stuff.
I think for me, it was always coming into the game and leaving it better than when I started. And, whether, that means that I have to take a little bit more on my shoulders to make sure girls of the future, both in the W League and Matildas, have it better. That's what I'm going to do. I've had the opportunity to ride so many different highs and lows, and it's been the most exciting journey of my whole life. And I haven't regretted anything. So to kind of, pass that on and help build really strong and exciting women and female footballers, that's what I want to kind of help contribute to.
A-League's All Access. You can check that out on Keep Up. You can hear from Lydia Williams, who unfortunately went down injured in the game today, Tayo. Her Melbourne Victory side up against Western United, and the winning goal from a Western United perspective added some serious salt to the wounds when Lids had to be substituted.
And it was unclear at full time when Jeff Hawkins spoke to the media exactly what the injury is. You see Lydia Williams here leaping and falling very heavily. The ball's already over the line, but she collides with Carly Johnson. We get a close-up look at it here. She recovers from a good save, but that impact there, we don't know if it's a back or an arm at the moment. I'm sure it'll come to pass what the exact problem is and how long. But Miranda Templeman did have to be subbed on for stoppage time. So our thoughts are with Lydia Williams, only her second game back in the Liberty A-League and hopefully not a serious injury.
Yeah, fingers crossed on that front. Matilda's in action this week, and we'll have a look at that a little bit later on as well. So I'm sure the Matilda's set up, and Tony Gustafsson will be having a close look at how Lids pulls up from today's game as well. If we have a look at the other goals in this game, T, set-piece defence really under the microscope. Was it a case of windy conditions playing havoc?
Well, look, I think wind is the hardest condition to play under, and it looked very, very windy out there today, and it certainly assisted Western United. I thought they didn't create too much up until that first goal, although they did share a fair spoil of the possession, and then that first goal going in, that instilled some belief in them and that belief to go for another. And then the wind helped them again, didn't it, Taya?
They showed great resilience because, you know, the entire defensive unit would have felt very disappointed with how they conceded the first goal of the game. But you see a goal from a set piece, albeit wind affected, and then you've got the second goal here from a second phase ball at a set piece. And we were sitting here talking about second season syndrome when they were 1-0 down. And now here at full time, we're seeing that Western United spirit coming from behind to win games that was characteristic of the side last year. And I think the post-game celebrations really summed up. You know, they've got a lot of player continuity year to year.
They do.
And I think that spirit in the dressing room has endured into this season as well.
How fickle are we? Bloody journos. Early on, round 2, and we're already talking second season syndrome. Luckily, they came back and won that game from Western United perspective. A highlight for Melbourne victory, T, is the return of Elise Kellon-Knight. She had that Achilles injury 7 months ago, a highly capped Matilda, a leader within this victory side, and it was awesome to see her back on the park.
It was so nice to see KK back after, you know, all she's been through with injuries. So fantastic for not only the victory in terms of the leader, football in general, and the Matilda setup too. This is great to see.
284 Matilda's caps on display in this game between West United and Melbourne victory. The great Dan Hemingway did the maths on that one and shared it with me. But it goes to show, Teo, the quality that we've got back in the Liberty A-League this season.
And it was Chloe Lagazzo's first start for Western United as well. Played 70 minutes, so didn't have to be out there for Western to win the game, but her ability to command the midfield and provide a presence and some leadership is going to be integral to Western United doing it again and returning to the finals this season.
I've got a Liberty A-League pass update for you both. I know you're on the edge of your seats waiting for this one. We broke 20 through 20k last week. We've broken through 25k this week. So if you're under 16 and you haven't got your Liberty A-League pass yet, get onto the Keep Up website and check it out, because it means you can get into any game across the country right throughout the season, both the Isuzu Ute A-League and the Liberty A-League for free. And there's a whole heap of Matildas to see in action as well. We saw round 1 with Courtney Vine there at Allianz Stadium. The youngsters in particular, the young teenage girls, absolutely screaming for Courtney Vine and just the Matilda star that they had on show.
You could hear it through the TV. It was incredible stuff. So great to see so many young fans out there every week.
We'll be in Perth a little bit later this week for the Matildas, and we saw Perth back in action today again. I'm going to ask you about their defence in just a minute, Teo, because I know it was your highlight from round 1, but they're 2 from 2 to start the season, which I, for one, didn't predict in the lead-up.
I had them making the top 6, but this is points in the bank. They're yet to concede a goal, so that defence stood up again. But this is the story of Susan Fonsong, Cam, Teresa, because she scored a marvellous goal with her left foot last week, similar position, right foot, different technique this week. That proves the difference. Newcastle, you know, gave a decent account of themselves without having any glorious chances to equalise in the game. And Perth Glory, they've got someone who is a real technician that has that sort of ability to decide a match.
Isn't she just that? She has always been a technician, and the only thing with Susan has been her consistency and continuity. She's had a few injury setbacks over the years. So last season she had a great run. It's obviously continued through NPL and pre-season for Perth, and now it's paying off with 2 goals from 2.
And 2 bangers as well, like 2 quality
similar area.
goals.
One was a great finesse with her left foot, and she drove one today with her right, so fantastic to see.
On that question of consistency, though, she announced herself to the old W League, I think as a 15-year-old scoring for Western Sydney Wanderers. We're talking back in like 2017 or 2018. So she's a name we've known for a long time. You can't lose sight of the fact that this is still a young player. It's just someone who was introduced to us very early.
Yeah, it's literally been just a case of niggling injuries throughout her career, and I played an NPL season at Sydney Olympic with her where she won everything. She played every single game. She was leading goal scorer. She was phenomenal, and then unfortunately the following season had another injury setback. So I'm so pleased to see her consistently playing and staying healthy.
Let's move on to Melbourne City's win over Canberra now. 2-1 in the end, Teo, but this was a game that City absolutely dominated. It blows my mind that Canberra could almost have nicked it late, because there was 109 passes in the final third for City compared to 19 for Canberra, and some really beautiful passes as well. Holly Mack was on fire.
Yeah, Melbourne City, T, you were commentating this game. The ball lived down at their end. To back up Neve's stat, they had 49 touches in the opposing penalty area.
Oh, it's a stat off, Teo.
So
There you go, guys.
we've done the stats. You watched the game. What went well for Melbourne City, and what can they take out of this win, given that it was a close shave after Canberra pegged a goal back?
Melbourne City were just in absolute control. They were so calm. They kept wonderful possession. The 2 goals were world class from Polisina, but Holly McNamara had a fantastic game. Daniela Galich on the right put in cross after cross that was pinpoint. They just was so calm about their possession. If anything, if I have to say anything critical, it was that perhaps they were too calm, and that's why the scoreline didn't really reflect the dominance that they had over the game.
This was a game they had on their terms and they won it, but they play after the international break their bogey team, Western United, who they lost both games to last season. So what lessons do they take away here from a game where maybe they could have walked away with a lot more than 2 goals? And some of the things maybe that you heard Dario Vidosic shouting from the sidelines to his team, trying to encourage them to keep those standards high.
Yeah, and look, at times I did hear him calling out to be calm, and perhaps as young players they took it a little too literally. And then, honestly, Canberra United had chances to come back in that game, which probably they had no right to. So perhaps just making sure they don't become complacent and just going for it in games and trying to get as high a scoreline as possible.
Holly McNamara was very, very dynamic against Wellington in round 1. Won the penalty here, which ended up deciding the game in round 2, but had a lot of chances on top of that. How have you assessed her start to the season so far?
Just brilliant, almost unmarkable in a way. When she gets going, she's very, very hard to tackle. She won a penalty for that reason. She set up a few real clear-cut chances, particularly for Hannah Wilkinson. Great to see her in excellent form.
If there was one player in the league who you could go and watch every week, is she top of the list? I know everyone.
She's
wants,
top of yours.
Well, everyone wants to go and watch Courtney Vine, and we all enjoy that because Courtney Vine is a Matilda. But Holly McNamara's got a handful of caps. She's still on the upward trajectory. Would she be one of the main draw cards of the league at the moment?
Taylor, there's a few on my list, but in terms of form right now, she's at the top of that for sure.
I loved your conversation about Julia Grosso during the coverage of this game as well, T. She's playing as an inverted fullback. Talk us through what she's doing then when City have the ball.
She's doing everything, Neve. She's an absolute engine. She gets up and back. She saves her team on occasion after occasion. And then at the end of the game, she doesn't even look tired. It's quite incredible. I don't think she gets the credit, or we don't speak enough about. I'm so glad you brought her up because I don't think she gets the credit she does deserve. But a very, very crucial player for City.
About Michelle Heyman, speaking of crucial players, we know the cricket's underway at the moment. Hopefully you've switched over to watch us on Dove Zone tonight, switched across from the cricket, because Michelle Heyman's about to bring up her century, Teo. 96 goals. She'll do it this season, and she managed to get Canberra back in this contest today.
Such an important player leading the line for them. Vesna Milivojevic was also, pretty good in this game and gave them an attacking outlet, T. And you see this is just a chaos ball, which has led to a moment for Stott and Liz Prue, the goalkeeper, that they would love to have back. But how important for Canberra that they take heart out of the fact that they weren't blown away. Their defence did provide some stoutness, and they were able to pinch a goal against a Melbourne City team that has so far looked pretty good.
Yeah, well, that goal came absolutely against the run of play there. It was a shock to everyone, but I'm not surprised it was Michelle Heyman that did score, and Vesna Milivojevic was very busy defensively in that game, and she just kept running, so she set that up. But yes, look, I don't think Canberra have a problem scoring and in attack. I think what they need to be looking at is more the defensive stocks, and they are a young defensive team.
Given away 3 penalties already in 2 games this season.
Yeah.
Is that indicative of just a young team, or has there been some bad luck in there as well?
Oh, I think some of the discipline in the box was a little questionable, and given that they are young players, they'll have a good look at that and certainly learn from it.
They've scored 5 goals in 2 games, so they'll feel a little bit hard done by to only have 1 point out of the opening 2 rounds of the Liberty A-League. One team who have been incredible, certainly today and across the opening couple of rounds, we've really enjoyed watching them play, is Wellington Phoenix. Before we have a look at their win today, let's hear from their new goalkeeper, Riley Foster, and what is a truly remarkable story.
So Boy Halorka against Riley Foster, great save! Riley Foster does it again!
Everything was coming to fruition, all that hard work, that sacrifice to be on top of the world and finally get my feet set into the ground, establish myself into the team and take over was exciting, to say the least, and unfortunate also to have that come down to me in literally seconds. I was told I should have died at least twice while the car was moving because of the fact that there's so much momentum going on, whiplash, all that, but the roof of the car came down, and if my seatbelt had done its job, I would have been killed instantly because the roof would have just crushed me.
Mind-blowing pictures there. You see that car and the fact that Riley Foster is now playing professional football once again. What a story, what a journey she has been on. You'll be able to see that story in full in the coming weeks on Keep Up. I can't wait. I know, talking to one of the journos who interviewed Riley for that story, he said it was the most incredible story he'd heard in 30 years in the media. So really looking forward to hearing more from Riley Foster. And Teo, loving seeing her in action for Wellington Phoenix. Paul Temple told us before round 1 that they were going to play this small ball kind of football. He meant they were going to be quick, they were going to be skillful, they were going to be a pleasure to watch. And they really have been through the opening 2 rounds.
Absolutely. And it actually paid dividends today in terms of end product and scoring goals. They broke through to win 3-0. First one's from a set piece, but the second 2 goals were probably absolutely typical, T, of what the Wellington Phoenix are aiming to do playing through teams. And we saw so much of them attempting to do this in the first half. Macy Fraser in particular with a long shot and then also hitting the crossbar. In the second half, that's pinpointed into the corner. They got their rewards.
Yeah, absolutely. And how refreshing is it to hear a coach speak so transparently about what they expect and what we'll see from their team. And it's happening out there, and they've deserved everything they've gotten in that game. They had a good start as well against a hard team in City as well, but very, very bright stuff from Wellington. Really exciting to watch.
Tough start to the season from a Western Sydney Wanderers perspective. We saw in round 1 against the Sky Blues, T, Caceres came onto the park in the second half and she really swung things for the Wanderers. She couldn't change the result, but she was a really quality addition to the side. Unfortunately today we saw her go down with an ankle injury and it didn't look pretty at all.
No, it didn't, and I think Caceres, you know, she's had a few of those injuries in the past, so I think she knew exactly what could have happened there, and we were actually commenting on what a quality player Caceres is and how crucial she is for the Wanderers. So really hope it's not as serious as it looks, and she'll be able to bounce back as soon as possible.
And it meant that we saw this young player enter the fray. Now, things happen every day that make me feel really old. This is absolutely one of them. Talia Younis, a new record. She's 14 years old, the first player born after the W League started, Teo, to play in the A-Leagues.
We knew this moment might have been coming at some point later this season. It's amazing to think that someone who turns 15 this week has now broken that record. Look, Talia Younis came on, held her own in the game, and that's admirable, T. And Western Sydney Wanderers, they got an exemption in order to play her before she turned 15, excuse me. And, you know, they trusted her with half an hour there after Mel Caceres sadly left the game injured.
Yeah, to me, Teo, if you're good enough, you are old enough, and from what I saw, Talia Younis held her her absolute own there. She seemed mentally and physically ready, and she did a great job. So what a story.
It is important as the league gets younger, though, to alleviate the pressure on young aspiring players that you don't have to make your A-League debut at this age. We've seen successful players debut at 18, 19, 20. We've seen late developers come in their mid-20s after toiling in the NPL. So it is important to ease the expectations here and not say, you know, it's an amazing achievement, but also there is an element of making sure it's the right personality and the right player to debut at such a young age.
Yeah, and case by case, every player is different. And I don't think it happens enough for us to say, oh, it's happening so much. This is a rare case here, and she's obviously, like I said, physically and mentally ready enough. And I doubt any coach would throw a youngster in if they weren't ready.
Held her own in that game, in that 30 minutes or so that she played as well. Looked composed. It was really remarkable to see. Now, Teo, we talk about holding your own. We really hope you're going to hold your own with your fantasy tips throughout this Liberty A-League season. Let's have a look back at what Teo tipped for us in round one.
I'm going off the beaten path. I've sorted by the lowest value and the most points for a player that didn't score, and it's a defender, Claudia Chico from the Newcastle Jets. It's time for your fantasy team to go Chico mode. 12 points this week.
All I could think of at the time was Chico roll. But how did that play out for you, Teo?
Not great. Got a yellow card and then got subbed off in Newcastle's defeat. So no clean sheet bonus, got a yellow card. You know what? I'm sticking with Claudia Chico because she's a good player. Fantasy points, you know, maybe not so important in my assessment. The fantasy pick this week, though...
Oh, I look forward to hearing it.
I've sorted by lowest value. I'm looking for a bargain. And I'm looking for a player who is almost certainly going to play, Sarah Morgan from Adelaide. Okay. She has played for 4 different clubs already, even though she's only played 15 appearances in the A-League. This is a massive chance for her at Adelaide United. I think she's going to hold down that midfield spot. 12 points this week. So my pick for week 2 is Sarah Morgan, Adelaide United.
Okay.
Noted.
We'll hold you to it.
I thought you were going to say
about that.
Susan Fonsenkamp for a second.
Oh, that's the obvious pick, though. I'm trying to find value in the margins, and it failed last week, and fair enough.
Is she in your team, Fonsenkamp?
Yes, and I was celebrating when that goal went in.
Yeah, I bet you were. It's still remarkable from her over the opening couple of rounds. You mentioned Adelaide there, so let's throw it back to Friday night, shall we? And their clash with Central Coast Mariners. T, this was a remarkable game to watch. The first Mariners win in 14 years. Emily Husbands brought the side back into the league this season, and they controlled this game.
They did, and something to celebrate that. After 14 years, winning their first game, they bounced back from their round 1 loss, and like you said, they looked comfortable in this game. They looked happy, great culture they're building. They dominated this game, in my opinion, and celebrated with the win there.
They didn't create a heap of goal-scoring chances in round 1, Teo, but in this one, 17 shots, 9 on target. They created a lot of opportunities.
T, what do you put that down to? Because I think Central Coast were the biggest improver in terms of performance from round 1 to round 2. They got the result to go with it, which is important too. They got value for the improvement in the performance. But what do you put it down to that was such a remarkable transformation from what was a very cagey game in round 1 against the Jets?
Yeah, look, I think Ergamal coming on in that first round changed the game. And I think Emily Husband's still getting to know her full squad, and they're all still getting to know each other. So for them to put in a performance like that so early on is very, very promising. But Ergamal, what a game she had, and Peter Trimmis ended up starting the game as well. And I thought they both actually came in round 1 and did fantastically well, and it paid off in this round.
She was so
busy, so busy. You know, in and around that box, going forward, they've got options. It's looking very good for them.
I loved the goal celebration after she scored as well. It showed that unity that they're building as well there at the Central Coast Mariners. What about Kai Simon? Star signing. We haven't seen her yet. She keeps feeling like she's there or thereabouts, but hasn't yet been named in an actual team sheet, Taylor.
No, and the Mariners keep naming her in their ins for their squad each week. So they could always declare her out if she's a few weeks away, but they keep naming her in the extended squad. It's just she hasn't made the team sheet yet. Shouldn't lose sight with Adelaide. The international breaks come at a really good time for them because Marushka Waldus, Izzy Hodgson, the captain, those two should be back. Emily Condon's a maybe, and hopefully Nanako Sasaki maybe a week or 2 after the international break. I mean, that's 4 of their starting 11. Maybe, I don't want to make excuses for Adelaide, but maybe understandable why the Mariners caught them at a good time.
Let's have a look to what's coming up this week because we've got the Matildas back in action. Olympic qualifiers, they're on in Perth. They start on Thursday night. It's going to be a really big week. You can catch all of the games on 10 Play on Paramount Plus from the 26th On the East Coast, it'll be 10 p.m. They play again then on Sunday night and again the following Wednesday. So Iran, Philippines and Chinese Taipei in this, the second round of Olympic qualifying. First time we've seen the Matildas in action. Teo, talk us through the process to the Olympics. This is the first step. Where to from here?
3 groups of 4. Australia needs to finish top of the group to guarantee they will go into a 2-legged playoff in February. But what we don't know is who it will be against. If Japan and, say, China or South Korea top their group, it could be one of those two until further notice. We don't know if it's seeded. We don't know if it's a random draw. So you can imagine, come the February the 24th and 28th, it could be 2 legs against China, it could be 2 legs against South Korea, or really worryingly, it could be 2 legs against Japan, which would be a pretty daunting prospect to try and get through to the Olympic Games.
Will we know this by the time it starts
By they
next
play?
week? Surely they need to know
the
before.
AFC need to communicate this to the competing team.
Absolutely,
I have
yeah.
asked multiple layers of the game about what the rules of competition are, and everyone's in the dark. They don't know if they need to go out and score 10 goals a game to be the top seed. They don't know if it's going to be a random draw, and we're a 33% chance of getting Japan. Now, I'm assuming we're going to win all 3 games in order to make this, but I think the team in their preparation would also
That's
like to
astounding.
know
It's astounding
ahead of time.
that we don't know.
Do we know, though, that out of Japan, China and Australia, only 2 of those teams can make it to the Olympics?
It's a tough competition. It's a
very
smaller.
tough.
We saw the World Cup expand to 32 teams, and that was great. The Olympics isn't expanding. The
No.
Olympics is still a very tight bottleneck to get in.
And we see that with other continents too. So, yeah, it's tough, very
Heaps
tough.
to play for across the next few months. What do you want to see in this window, though, T? Obviously, there's a few unknowns, and we need some more
Yeah.
information on that front. But are you looking for any kind of a refresh, or is this really a bedding down combinations kind
Look,
of time?
I've thought back and forth about this and the concept of a refresh, but I can understand why Tony Gustafsson's gone for a similar squad to the World Cup squad. I mean, foreign competitions have just commenced, the A-Leagues has just commenced. So in terms of form, we're yet to see anything different or much from players. But I think by the time we hit the February, 2-legged playoffs, I think players absolutely should be picked on the form they've been in.
That international window in February falls after round 17 of the Liberty A-League. So we'll have
Plenty
more
of-
than 3/4
yeah.
of the season. You know, players like Chloe Lagazzo, Emily Gielnik, Elise Kellon-Knight, who aren't in this particular squad, will all have their chance, never mind the new faces that might emerge. So stable squad for now, but we've still got 15 more rounds of Liberty A-League before the next international window after this one.
Looking forward to that. Also looking forward to hearing from Nalin Masto with what's been making news right across socials this week.
So much has gone down in women's football over the weekend, but don't stress, I've got you covered. Firstly, brace yourself because 8 Aussies will be going head-to-head in the UEFA Women's Champions League group fixtures, and you bet the drama's going to be happening in Group D when Sam Kerr's Chelsea face Hayley Raso's Real Madrid, while Paris FC's Sarah Hunter will face IB Luik's BK Häcken. Ella Mastro Antonio, Ellie Carpenter and Larissa Kramer were drawn in Group B, while PSG's Claire Hunt will go up against Bayern Munich, Roma and Ajax. Don't know about you, but that sounds like the group of death. Now onto some bittersweet news where the world's all-time leading international goalscorer Christine Sinclair announced she will retire from the Canadian women's national team at the end of this year. The 40-year-old broke the news on her Instagram with a really sentimental letter to her 16-year-old self, and it was met with a lot of love and support. It is sad to see another legend step away from the world game, but my word has she established a legacy. 6 World Cups, an Olympic gold medal, and a record 190 goals for Canada. And finally, the Jamaican women's national team have withdrawn from the CONCACAF Women's Gold Cup due to ongoing conflict with the Jamaican Football Federation. The team released a statement saying this is a necessary step they have to take, given the constant mistreatment of players, delayed payment, a lack of support, and poor communication. Considering how well they did at the Women's World Cup, it's going to be sad not seeing the Reggae girls in the competition.
Yeah, it sure is. Nalin, thank you so much. Hopefully they get that sorted out pronto because they were such a delight to watch during the World Cup. And Christine Sinclair, absolute GOAT, one of the legends of the game. And I loved the way she announced her retirement as well. Teo, we've got your fantasy tip. More broadly, what's your top tip for us?
The Matildas will score at least 25 goals across these 3 Olympic qualifiers. The pedal will be to the floor. They will not take any risks with regards to whether or not the AFC seeds this competition. 25 goals plus, 3 wins from 3.
Love that. Cannot wait to witness that. And I know there's a whole heap of fans in Perth who are keen to see it live as well. Taya Palazzeri, thank you so much.
See you next time, Neve.
See you next time. Teresa Polias, thank you.
See you soon.
Thank you so much for your company at home as well. Don't forget, if you can't join us on a Sunday night, maybe check out your priorities and make sure you can. But if you miss us, we're also on the podcast. So check out the Keep Up app or wherever you get your podcasts, and you can catch up on the Dub Zone latest there. Have a really lovely week. Don't forget, Tilly's in action on Thursday night, and we'll see you again really soon.